First contact and betrayal. The Intergalactic Council had observed Earth for centuries, watching with growing unease as the tiny blue planet's inhabitants progressed from primitive combustion engines to quantum computing in mere decades. What troubled the Council most wasn't humanity's technological prowess, but their psychological profile. A species that thrived on conflict, that grew stronger through adversity rather than submitting to it. Admiral Jorak of the Viridian Hegemony, eldest member of the Council's Security Division, studied the holographic projection of Earth with 6 narrowed eyes. Their development curve is unprecedented. At current rates, they'll achieve reliable interstellar travel within 15 years, not 50 as we initially projected. "And that frightens you?" asked Counselor Ilara, her translucent form shimmering with bioluminescence. The Medusan representative was newer to the Council, still naive to its ways. "It should frighten all of us," Jorak replied, manipulating the display to show Earth's military installations. "They spend more resources on weapons development than any species we've encountered. Their entertainment glorifies conflict. Their history is an unbroken chain of wars." The Chamber of Elders fell silent as data streamed across the central display. Intercepted communications, analysis of military capabilities, psychological assessments. Humanity, it seemed, had evolved with a unique trait. They unified in the face of external threats. Where most species crumbled under pressure, humans forged themselves into something stronger. "We have 2 options," said Tylox, the archon of strategic affairs. "Containment or integration. I recommend the former." Ilara's tendrils pulsed with disagreement. "Containment has failed before." "The Varnish." "Do not speak of the Varnish," Jorak interrupted sharply. "That was different." "Was it?" Ilara persisted. They too refused to submit. The Council attempted containment, and 3 systems were reduced to ash before it ended. The ancient Archon Cthera, who rarely spoke at these gatherings, raised a withered appendage. "The humans are more numerous than the Varnish ever were, more adaptable, more unpredictable. If we attempt containment and fail, the consequences could be far worse." After 3 days of deliberation, the Council reached its decision. Earth would be approached diplomatically, offered integration into the galactic community with all its benefits, medical technology, FTL travel, access to resource-rich systems. What wouldn't be immediately apparent were the constraints that came with these gifts: surveillance, resource quotas, technological restrictions disguised as safety protocols. Captain Maya Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Pathfinder, Earth's most advanced vessel, watching as the Council's diplomatic ship emerged from FTL. At 43, Chen had spent 20 years in the United Earth Defense Force, rising through the ranks through competence rather than connections. She'd been selected to lead this mission not only for her tactical acumen, but her diplomatic skill, qualities that would be tested today. "Magnificent, isn't it?" said Dr. James Okafor, stepping beside her. The xenolinguist had been working tirelessly since first contact 6 months ago, developing translation matrices for the 12 primary council languages. "Magnificently concerning," Chen replied, studying the alien vessel. It was beautiful, a crystalline structure that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, leaving iridescent trails in its wake. But Chen's trained eye noticed the weapon emplacements cleverly disguised as sensor arrays, the shield generators masquerading as decorative elements. This was no mere diplomatic vessel. It was a warship wearing evening attire. "You're overthinking, Maya," Okafor said, though his voice betrayed his own unease. "They've traveled 17 light-years to talk. If they wanted a fight, they wouldn't have announced themselves." Chen wasn't convinced, but she kept her concerns to herself as she prepared to welcome the council representatives aboard the Pathfinder. The diplomatic protocols had been meticulously planned: neutral territory, limited personnel, transparent communication. When the council delegates crossed the airlock threshold, Chen was struck by their diversity. Jorak resembled a mantis crossed with a coral reef, his exoskeleton adorned with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with his mood. Ilara was essentially sentient water given form by an electromagnetic field. The third delegate, Kythera, appeared ancient beyond measure. Her species apparently evolved from something like Earth's cephalopods. "Welcome aboard the Pathfinder," Chen said, performing the universal greeting gesture they'd been taught. "Open palms, slight bow." "Captain Chen," Jorak responded, his words translated through a device at his thorax. "We appreciate Earth's willingness to engage with the greater galactic community." The initial discussions were cordial, focused on cultural exchange and scientific cooperation. But as the talks progressed over weeks, Chen noted disturbing patterns. The Council representatives spoke of guidance and oversight, of Earth's need to mature before receiving certain technologies. They referenced other species that had been uplifted by the Council's benevolence. Yet when pressed for details about these civilizations, their answers grew evasive. Earth's intelligence agencies had been busy. While diplomatic channels remained open, covert operations had intercepted and decrypted Council communications. What they discovered confirmed Chen's worst fears: the Council's history of subjugating species under the guise of protection, of dismantling potentially competitive civilizations through manufactured conflicts or resource manipulation. 3 months into negotiations, Chen confronted Jorak with evidence of the Council's interference with the Varnish, a species that had been reduced to pre-industrial technology after refusing Council terms. "This is a misinterpretation," Jorak insisted, his bioluminescence flaring with what Chen had learned to recognize as agitation. The Varnish were unstable, self-destructive. The Council acted to prevent greater tragedy by destroying their orbital infrastructure and triggering a nuclear winter. Chen countered. "Our analysts have reconstructed enough data to know what happened." Jorak's compound eyes fixed on Chen with new intensity. "Captain, you must understand the complexities of galactic governance. Some species require firmer guidance. And you believe humanity is such a species." "We believe humanity has extraordinary potential," Ilara interjected, her form rippling, "but also extraordinary capacity for violence. The Council seeks balance." "Balance on your terms," Chen said, "with you holding the scales." Despite the tension, negotiations continued. Earth's leaders, divided on how to proceed, agreed to a provisional arrangement. A human settlement would be established on Mars as a demonstration of goodwill, with Council observers present to facilitate technological exchange. The Mars colony would serve as a bridge between Earth and the greater galactic community. 500 volunteers, including scientists, engineers, and their families, relocated to the Mars facility. Among them was Dr. Elena Reyes and her 8-year-old daughter Elisa, a brilliant child who had become something of a mascot for the colony with her insatiable curiosity about their alien visitors. For 6 months, the arrangement seemed promising. Council representatives shared limited technology, advances in agriculture, medicine, clean energy. Earth provided insights into human culture, art, and social structures. The Council delegates appeared particularly interested in humanity's resilience, their ability to thrive in diverse environments. Then came the day that would change everything. The Council vessel Eternal Vigilance entered Mars orbit unannounced. When questioned, Jorak claimed it was a routine patrol, nothing to concern Earth authorities. But intelligence operatives intercepted communications indicating the vessel carried planet-cracking weaponry, technology far beyond what the Council had acknowledged possessing. Before Earth could respond, the Eternal Vigilance opened fire on the Mars colony. The official explanation later given was a tragic malfunction, weapon systems activating during a calibration sequence. The unofficial truth, revealed through intercepted communications, was far darker. A deliberate test of Earth's defenses and response capabilities. The Mars colony, with its 500 inhabitants, was obliterated in seconds. Among the dead was Elisa Reyes, who had been recording a video message for her grandparents on Earth when the attack came. Her final moments. a child's confusion turning to terror as the sky above Mars erupted in fire, were transmitted back to Earth in real time. The Council representatives expressed formal regret while offering reparations and promises of investigation. But it was too late. Earth had seen the truth behind the Council's benevolent facade. 3 days after the Mars massacre, as the Council delegates prepared to depart Earth with assurances of continued diplomacy, something unprecedented happened. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in a facility unknown even to most of Earth's leadership, a signal was activated. Admiral Kyra Washington, head of Earth's classified Omega Protocol, stood before the United Earth Defense Council in their emergency session. Her weathered face revealed nothing as she activated the secure display. For 70 years, she began, since we first detected anomalous signals from the TAS-CD system, Earth has been preparing for this moment. While we hoped for peaceful contact, we planned for the alternative. The display showed a massive underground complex beneath Antarctica, extending kilometers into the ice. Within it stood row upon row of vessels unlike anything in Earth's public fleet. Sleek, predatory ships built with technology that shouldn't exist. The ancient Armada, Washington continued, 200 warships and support vessels constructed using reverse-engineered technology from a crashed scout ship in 1957. We've kept it hidden, developed it in secret, knowing that humanity's survival might one day depend on it. President Alvarez stared at the display in disbelief. All this time, without authorization. With the highest authorization, Washington corrected. Project Sentinel has operated under a special directive since the Cold War, outside normal chains of command. Each president is briefed only if activation becomes necessary. And you believe that time is now? Asked the Chinese premier, her face grim. Washington nodded once. The Council destroyed our colony, killed our people, killed a child, to test us. This wasn't a malfunction. It was a message. And it's time we responded with one of our own. Around the table, Earth's leaders absorbed this revelation in stunned silence. The existence of such a fleet violated countless international treaties, yet no one spoke of prosecution. They had all seen Eliza Reyes' final transmission. The Council believes we're primitives, Washington said, her voice hardening. They think we're decades away from posing any threat. They're wrong. The ancient Armada is ready for deployment. The only question remaining is whether you'll give the order. President Alvarez looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each leader. One by one, they nodded. Admiral Washington, he said finally, you have your authorization. Show the Council exactly what humanity is capable of when provoked. Beneath the Antarctic ice, the ancient Armada began to rise. The ancient Armada rises. Chorak stood on the command deck of the Council flagship Immutable Law, watching as Earth receded in the viewscreen. The diplomatic mission had achieved its primary objective, assessment of humanity's capabilities and psychology. The destruction of the Mars colony had been regrettable but necessary, providing valuable data on human response patterns. High Commander called the sensor officer, her crystalline appendages flickering with alarm. We're detecting multiple energy signatures emerging from the southern polar region of Earth. Conventional weapons? Jorak asked, unconcerned. Human military technology was primitive by Council standards. Unknown configuration, the officer replied. But the energy output is impossible for their technology level. Jorak moved swiftly to the tactical display. What he saw defied explanation. 200 vessels rising from beneath Earth's ice cap, each larger than anything humans should be capable of building. More disturbing was their design. The sleek, predatory shapes didn't match known human aesthetics. Magnify, he ordered, mandibles clicking with agitation. The display zoomed in on the lead vessel. Along its hull were markings in an ancient script that sent cold dread through Jorak's exoskeleton. Impossible, he whispered. High Commander, Ilara questioned, flowing beside him. Those are precursor markings, Jorak said, referring to the long-vanished species whose technology had formed the foundation of the Council's power. How could humans possibly? His question was cut short as the communication system activated without authorization. On every screen throughout the ship appeared the face of a human female, dark-skinned, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held no mercy. "I am Admiral Kyra Washington of Earth's Sentinel Defense Force," she said without preamble. "You have committed an act of war against humanity by destroying our Mars colony. There will be no negotiations, no reparations, no diplomatic solutions." Jorak attempted to respond, but the transmission was one way. "For 70 years, we have prepared for this moment," Washington continued. "When the Council scout ship crashed in what you'd call our mid-20th century, we learned we weren't alone. We studied its technology, replicated it, improved upon it. We built the ancient Armada not to conquer, but to ensure that humanity would never be conquered." The tactical display showed the human fleet accelerating to speeds that should have been impossible for their technological level. "You killed 500 of our people. You killed a child. Now you will learn why every species that has ever fought humans has regretted it." The transmission ended. Jorak turned to his tactical officer. "Raise shields. Prepare for..." Before he could finish, 3 human vessels appeared alongside the immutable law, having somehow bypassed the Council ship's detection systems. Their weapons fired in concert, not targeting vital systems, but precision striking the engines and communication arrays. "Impossible," Jorak repeated as alarms blared throughout the ship. "They can't have mastered quantum phasing already." The immutable law, pride of the Council fleet, found itself dead in space, weapons offline, communications silenced. Around them, the rest of the Council escort vessels were suffering similar fates, disabled with surgical precision rather than destroyed outright. On the remaining functional view screen, Jorak watched as the majority of Earth's fleet bypassed them entirely, accelerating toward the nearest FTL corridor that would lead directly to Council space. In the command center beneath Antarctica, Admiral Washington monitored the initial engagement with grim satisfaction. Decades of preparation were paying off as the Sentinel fleet executed Operation Prometheus exactly as planned. "Strike teams report all Council vessels neutralized," reported her executive officer, Commander Darius Jones. "Minimal casualties on both sides. The diplomatic delegation has been secured." Washington nodded. The Council members who had been on Earth were now detained in a secure facility, unharmed but isolated. They would be valuable for information and, eventually, negotiation. But that time was far off. "And the Vanguard?" she asked. "The main fleet has entered FTL. ETA to the Arcturus Gate is 17 hours. From there, it's a direct path to the Council hub world of Nexus Prime." Washington's eyes remained fixed on the strategic display, where hundreds of small lights represented human vessels now speeding toward Council space. "And our secondary objectives?" "Proceeding as planned," Jones confirmed. "Strike teams are en route to the coordinates extracted from the Council databases. If their intelligence is accurate, we'll have liberated the first subjugated world within 24 hours. Liberation, not conquest. That distinction had been central to the Sentinel Protocol since its inception. Earth would not replace one oppressor with another. Any species freed from Council control would be offered alliance, not subjugation. "What about the precursor site on Mars?" Washington asked, referring to the real reason the Mars colony had been established: to investigate anomalous energy readings discovered beneath the Valles Marineris. "Data indicates it survived the attack," Jones said. "The Council either didn't know it was there or deliberately avoided damaging it. Research Team Omega is preparing for insertion once we've secured the area." Washington allowed herself a moment of reflection. The path ahead would be bloody and difficult. The Council controlled thousands of worlds, commanded fleets far larger than Earth's Armada. But they had grown complacent in their power, reliant on technological superiority rather than tactical innovation. And most importantly, they didn't understand humanity. They saw a primitive, fractious species and assumed weakness. They didn't grasp that Earth's history of conflict had forged something unique in the galaxy: a species that had turned war into an art form, that had experienced every form of warfare imaginable and developed countermeasures for each. The Council Emergency Conclave convened in a state of unprecedented panic. Reports were flooding in from across Council space, human vessels appearing without warning, striking critical infrastructure, and vanishing before defenses could respond. More disturbing were the reports from subjugated worlds, where humans were making contact with native resistance movements, providing them with weapons and tactical support. "How is this possible?" demanded the Archon of Internal Security, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. Their technological level was assessed at Development Stage 3. These attacks suggest Stage 6 capabilities at minimum. Cthulhu, who had returned from Earth just before the crisis erupted, raised a gnarled appendage. "We gravely underestimated them. The humans have apparently reverse-engineered precursor technology from a scout ship that crashed on their world decades ago." Precursor technology. The chamber erupted in disbelief and fear. "We must mobilize the Grand Fleet," insisted one counselor. "Crush this rebellion before it spreads." "The Grand Fleet has already engaged human forces near the Arcturus Gate," Cthulhu replied solemnly. They were defeated. Silence fell across the chamber. The Grand Fleet comprised over 1,000 warships, the pinnacle of Council military power. It had not faced defeat in 10,000 years. "How many human ships?" someone finally asked. 63, Cthulhu answered. "They employed tactics we've never encountered, weapons we thought theoretically impossible. The Grand Fleet wasn't destroyed. The humans disabled their propulsion and communication systems, then proceeded deeper into Council space. They're coming here," realized the Archon, "to Nexus Prime itself." Cthulhu's ancient eyes revealed nothing. "Yes, and I believe their restraint thus far has been deliberate. They could have annihilated our forces but chose precision strikes instead. They're sending a message." "What do they want?" asked a younger counselor, voice trembling. "Justice," Cthulhu said simply. "They believe we murdered their people deliberately. And from their perspective, they're right." Before anyone could respond, the chamber's security system chimed. On the central display appeared the face of Admiral Washington. "Esteemed Council," she began, her tone coldly formal. "Earth's Sentinel fleet is now in orbit around Nexus Prime. Your defensive grid has been neutralized. Your communication systems are under our control. We could, at this moment, reduce your world to ash, as you did to our Mars colony." The counselors stared in silent horror. "But unlike you, we do not target civilians or children," Washington continued. "We seek justice, not genocide. These are our terms: immediate independence for all subjugated worlds, full disclosure of all Council technologies and archives, and a tribunal for those responsible for the Mars massacre." "This is outrageous," sputtered the Archon. "You cannot dictate terms to the Intergalactic Council. We have ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years." Washington's expression didn't change. "Your rule ends today. You have 1 hour to respond. After that, we begin dismantling your government structure by force." The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in chaos. Cthulhu moved slowly to the central position, her ancient form commanding attention despite its frailty. "We should accept their terms," she said quietly. "Surrender to primitives." The Archon was apoplectic. "They are not primitives," Cthulhu countered. "They are something the Council has never faced before, a species that evolved through conflict rather than despite it, a species that turns adversity into advantage. The humans could have destroyed us already, but they've shown restraint that we did not when we attacked their colony." She gestured to the data displays, showing the human fleet in perfect formation around Nexus Prime. "Look at their precision, their discipline. In all our history, have you ever seen a military force so perfectly coordinated? They are offering us peace on terms that, while humiliating, will allow our civilization to survive." Slowly, reluctantly, the Council began to acknowledge the reality of their situation. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous but sufficient. The Great Intergalactic Council, which had ruled the stars for 50 millennia, would submit to the demands of a species that had achieved spaceflight less than a century ago. 1 year later, Admiral Washington stood on the observation deck of the UES Pathfinder, now rebuilt and serving as Earth's diplomatic flagship. Beside her stood representatives from 20 formerly subjugated species, each now part of the new Galactic Confederation, an alliance of equals rather than a hierarchy of control. Below them, the ceremony on Mars was visible via holographic projection. At the site where the colony had been destroyed, a memorial was being dedicated. 500 pillars of Martian stone, each inscribed with the name of a victim. At the center stood a slightly larger pillar bearing the name Elizarias, with a simple inscription beneath, the spark that lit the flame of freedom. "They're calling it the Reyes Doctrine," said Captain Maya Chen, now Earth's ambassador to the Confederation. "The principle that no civilization has the right to subjugate another, regardless of technological disparity." Washington nodded. "A good principle. One worth fighting for." "Fighting," mused Ilara, who had defected from the Council during the conflict and now represented her own liberated people. "Humans have a unique relationship with that concept. You fight not because you love violence, but because you love what you're protecting." Washington's gaze remained on the memorial. "We fight because sometimes there's no other choice. But we prefer to build." She gestured to the construction visible in the distance, the first city of the new Mars, rising from the ashes of the old. "The Council's fatal error wasn't attacking us," Washington continued. "It was failing to understand us. They saw our capacity for violence and assumed that was our defining trait. They didn't recognize that same capacity gives us our greatest strength, the will to defend what we love, no matter the cost." As the ceremony concluded, the assembled representatives observed a moment of silence. Then, one by one, ships from 20 different species activated their running lights, creating a constellation of solidarity above the red planet. The ancient Armada, which had brought the Council to its knees, was now being partially decommissioned, its technology shared among the Confederation members. Earth had no desire to become the new Council, to rule through fear or technological superiority. Instead, humanity offered something the galaxy had never known under Council rule: genuine partnership, respect for sovereignty, and the promise that no child of any species would ever again be sacrificed to preserve the power of the few over the many. In the Council archives, now open to all Confederation members, historians discovered something remarkable: prophecies from the precursors themselves, dating back to the time before their mysterious disappearance. They spoke of a species that would arise from a blue world, a species forged in fire and tempered by conflict, who would shatter the chains of oppression and usher in an age of true cooperation among the stars. Whether these prophecies referred to humanity remained a matter of scholarly debate. What was not debatable was the new reality of the galaxy, a community of equals, united not by dominance, but by mutual respect and the shared memory of a human child whose death had changed everything. As the memorial lights shone across the Martian landscape, Ambassador Chen stepped beside Admiral Washington. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. "All the secrecy, the decades of preparation." Washington considered the question, thinking of the 500 lost at the Mars colony, of Elizarias, whose final moments had galvanized Earth's resolve. "I wish it hadn't been necessary," she said finally. "I wish first contact had been peaceful, that the Council had offered friendship instead of subjugation. But given what we know now of what they've done to other worlds." She left the thought unfinished, but Chen understood. The liberation of 20 enslaved species, the dismantling of the Council's oppressive hierarchy, the foundation of a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than control. These were achievements that would echo across millennia. "Eliza would be proud," Chen said simply. Washington nodded, her eyes on the stars that now belonged not to conquerors, but to all who sailed among them in peace. "Yes," she agreed. "I believe she would."